Protesters are gathering at the corner of Tulane and Broad at this hour as a show of solidarity for the Occupy Wall Street movement. The group says it's fed up with the corporate greed that it believes has led to the country's economic collapse. Paul Murphy joins us live with more on today's march on City Hall. Paul?
Sally Ann, as you can see, we have about 200 protesters gathering here out in front of Orleans Criminal Court near Tulane and Broad to kick off a march to Lafayette Square. According to Occupy NOLA, protesters plan to assemble outside the Federal Reserve building there to, quote, call attention to the greed of corporate financial institutions. The group says it chose this location to begin the march not far from Orleans Parish Prison to highlight the continuing crisis of the prison industrial complex. In a growing number of cities, similar Occupy protests have presented a mixed bag of complaints, but in general terms, the movement is highlighted by an anti-establishment message. A message punctuated by a denouncement of corporate excess, high unemployment, and a lack of economic opportunity. But here there were also some local issues mixed in, including police corruption and public housing. According to the NOPD, the group has a parade permit, so there is not expected to be any clashes with the law here.
We're not supposed to pay income tax. There's nothing on the books that shows us that we should be paying income tax. From freedom to fascism.
We're tired of 1% of the population holding, you know, what, 50, 60% of the wealth, and you know it's going to go. We're losing the middle class, and it's going to be the very rich and the very poor, and we don't want that in America.
And following this protest in Lafayette Square, some members of the Occupy NOLA group plan to set up an encampment across the street from City Hall at Duncan Plaza. And some protesters tell us they plan to live there for months. We're live in Mid-City. Paul Murphy, Channel 4 Eyewitness News. Sally Ann.
In other news, hundreds of marchers took to the streets of downtown New Orleans to protest a laundry list of issues from corporate greed to local ills in a spinoff to New York's Occupy Wall Street demonstrations. Paul Murphy reports on the Occupy NOLA movement.
Roughly 200 protesters left Orleans Criminal Court around noon today for a mile-and-a-half march through the business district of New Orleans. Similar to the Occupy Wall Street movement in 80 other cities, Occupy NOLA participants have a mixed bag of complaints punctuated by a denouncement of corporate excess, high unemployment, and a lack of economic opportunity.
We need better quality education for our children, health care, more hospitals. We need to get a life. We need our lives back.
We're specifically complaining about the bailouts that the banks got, who in turn they were supposed to extend credit to small businesses, and they've done everything but that.
By the time marchers made it to Lafayette Square, the crowd swelled to about 400. They chose this location across the street from the Federal Reserve building to call out the country's central banking system.
The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express.
While anti-establishment and corporate greed messages were recurring themes here at the Occupy NOLA protest, some local issues were also mixed in the crowd.
They got some local people out here who dealing with police brutality, dealing with the prison condition, the economy, unemployment, homelessness, you name it.
Protesters say they are tired of 1% of the population holding 50 to 60% of the wealth, and they now say it's time for the other 99% to be heard.
A coalition of people have come to the conclusion that a small percentage is running this country and not doing it at our benefit. And if we don't stop them, we're going to continue going downhill.
Paul Murphy, Channel 4 Eyewitness News.
Following the protest in Lafayette Square, some members of the Occupy NOLA group were expected to set up an encampment in Duncan Plaza across the street from New Orleans City Hall. The NOPD says for now, protesters will be allowed to sleep in the park. Coming up new at 6 o'clock, a local financial planner weighs in on the Occupy NOLA movement.